Alright, hey everybody, I wanted to do a short and sweet video on what I did to insulate my attic. I need to blow in some more insulation. As you can see, there's fiberglass here, but you can see the boards. So the first thing I did was air seal everything. So this is an example over top of my kitchen where the soffits were unsealed. This used to just be a big hole that went down into the soffit. I cut plywood for each hole on each bay. It went pretty far down. And then I used great stuff to foam around all of the edges. Could also use caulk, but some of the cuts weren't great, so I filled in the holes with great stuff. I also went around to the soffits on around the edges where I could, and put in soffit vents. I had to do this on my belly, and it was a pretty tight fit, so I tore the insulation off around the edge so I could reach down in there and get the soffit vent up. But I put a soffit vent in, so that's ready. I didn't do it on all the bays down here simply because there's an addition back there that they put a shed roof on top of this roof, so there's no soffits there anymore. Anyway, I haven't yet vented the two bathroom fans that are up here to the roof, but I will be doing that. But otherwise, I went around and caulked and great stuffed around everything. Another thing I wanted to show you was the flue pipe for my furnace. I put metal around the hole and caulked with fire caulk into the crack between the metal that went down into the chase and the flue pipe. Great stuff around everything, and I have caulk underneath here where I stapled it. And then I made some kind of like extra spacing, so to speak, out of the same sheet metal from a vent. I just cut little tabs on it and then bent it around so that basically there's just empty space behind here, so that the insulation is not directly touching the flue pipe, which can get kind of hot. So fire caulk so that the metal is not touching the flue pipe. It's probably maybe a ½ inch or so all the way around. And then I used the fire caulk that is actually touching the flue pipe. So, and then this just keeps the insulation away. Another thing I did to get prepared was I have this vaulted ceiling over top of my living room that's up above the main floor, as you can see. So I put boards kind of on the edge just to hold the insulation back. So anywhere it's going to fall, where there's a second level, you're just going to want to put it so that the blown in doesn't fall over the edge. It would have been nicer on these walls to do foam, but I didn't. So that's that. Over here you can see there's actually like a porch out there, and it's outside, so that's unfinished space beyond those vertical boards. So I just put some boards up against that, again, to just catch the insulation. Then all these little vertical pieces that you can see sticking up, the ones down here are simply to gauge height. I had built these, which are going to be little, as you can see, little stands to put some boards on, so that after this is all filled up with insulation, I have something to walk on up here if I ever need to get up here again. And the way I did that was simply I cut a whole ton of old scrap 2x6 and nailed one of them down onto the joist, and then another one right beside it with a few more nails. Keeps it pretty snug, and then I can just put boards on top of it, and then the insulation will be underneath. I had some extra boards that from little stands that I just used here and there to gauge depth. So in order to get the R50 that I need to go that much higher above the existing fiberglass, and that'll just help me when I'm blowing it in gauge the depth while I'm doing it. The last thing I wanted to show you was around the entryway into the attic. I put boards all around it so that the insulation again is held back. And then I made this new exit plug thing that is full of rigid foam insulation. So there's about 5.5 inches of rigid foam inside of that box, and then I built a new thing that it kind of sits down inside of. And then after I'm done in here, I will put weather stripping around the edge of here to make sure that that's nice and snug. So I also, I guess everywhere there was a place that the wires came up, you can kind of see it down there. I put the caulking in all the holes where all the wires come up through for the walls. So, and then there's another set of soffit vents that I did. So that's it. That's all I wanted to show you. I'll do another quick video whenever I'm done with the blown in, just to show you what the end result is. But this was a pretty cool project, and hopefully this is just the way I did it, and hopefully it'll help you. After video, just wanted to do a quick one real quick just to show you kind of everything after it was done. I blew in cellulose insulation. You can see I used these blocks that I showed you last time to gauge the depth. Those were extremely useful because it gets ridiculously dusty during. You probably can't see more than 5 or 10 feet in front of you. So highly recommended to have something very obvious to gauge your depth. It just keeps on coming, and when you're, have somebody outside feeding you the insulation, it's hard, to communicate, so it's loud out there, so you can't just yell at anybody. So definitely have something that you can just keep on going and never really have to stop. Just be prepared ahead of time. You don't want to have to stop and do anything in the middle. It is a very dusty, dirty job that you really just want to get done. So do everything ahead of time. But anyway, these blocks I used to gauge the depth everywhere I needed to put insulation. Last thing I'll show you real quick is just the flue pipe. You can see how it kept the insulation away from there, so recommend that. Also recommend these little boards. So I did make some of these boards were both depth and are going to be used to put those other boards that I cut ahead of time up here to make as walkways. Very useful so that you don't have to ever touch this stuff because it's extremely dusty. So yeah, prepare ahead of time, have a nice bright light, and definitely do yourself. The stuff you can rent at Lowe's or Menards or Home Depot all work really well. That's what we used, the DIY method. So definitely noticed it in my heating bill last winter as well. This is it's been a year since I put this in here, and noticed it very clearly in my heating bill and the amount that my furnace was running, even though we had a pretty cold winter last winter. So highly recommend it if any of you need insulation up here in the attic, in your attic. So that's all I got.